Being a child of the 90s, I grew up with a lot of dairy propaganda.
Bend me, shake me, any way you want me.
Straight to your bones, from the farm to the fridge. We know what you want, cause we know how you live. We got the big bad Bessie with the M-I-L-K.
Give me up, me mama. Yup, me mama. Yup for when the morning come.
There's something about those dairy ads from the 90s that are just so weirdly nostalgic to me. But it wasn't even just the ads. I mean, I remember as a kid getting a soccer medal with a little blue dairy logo on the back. I don't know what that was about. Super strange. The dairy industry in Canada is very tightly controlled. It's a cartel. And that is not me being dramatic. It is literally a cartel.
Cartel, an association of manufacturers or suppliers with the purpose of maintaining prices at a high level and restricting competition.
Trump has had beef with the dairy industry since his very first term.
Canada, what they've done to our dairy farm workers is a disgrace. It's a disgrace.
But I must be getting deja vu or something because it is back in his sights again.
We don't need their milk. We got a lot of milk. We got a lot of everything.
I don't want to be a sounding board for Carolyn Levitt. God help me, I do not want to do that.
It's very simple. Prime Minister Carney in Canada caved to President Trump in the United States of America.
Carney caved on the NATO budget. Carney caved on the digital services tax. Will he cave on dairy too? So this week, what is Trump so upset about, and what is the system that everyone is trying so hard to protect? We wanted to go straight to the teat. So we sent our intrepid senior producer, Aviva Lessard, to Erskine Farms in Quebec to go investigate, but mostly just to pet some cows.
Oh, hi.
Hey.
Hey, nice to meet you.
I'm going to throw on a clean shirt, Jason.
Okay, great to meet you.
You're Aviva?
Aviva, you don't hear from very much in front of the mic, but Aviva, nice to have you on.
Great to be here, Sam.
Tell me what you saw.
So first of all, and this is very important, I saw some baby cows.
Well, she was born last night. So I've had 6 calves born in the last 3 days at around 2 in the morning. You can go right up to her. She's not going to be... Yeah. It's kind of like a dog. You just give them time to adjust to you, and they want to smell you.
Well, that is very important. I agree. But Aviva, I have an equally important question.
Okay, yeah.
What were the baby cows' names?
They don't have their individual names, but he does like to talk to them.
Hey, BB. I talk to them all the time, so.
I mean, I guess I get not naming them. It is a business. I don't name my podcast equipment. But tell me more about what you saw at Erskine Farms.
Well, first thing I actually wanted to just mention, Jason's a real milk guy.
I drink so much milk, though. Some people drink water. I drink milk all the time. I find in hot weather, like, it's nothing more energizing. It's nice when it's super cold, too. Like, that's what I like. 2015, I had, I guess, my midlife crises, and instead of buying a sports car, I went organic. So it was kind of a learning farming all over again, because it was things that even my grandfather stopped doing in his time, right?
That is a hell of a midlife crisis.
Yeah, he didn't exactly pull away from work.
Every 8 hours, our cows get milked. So that requires 2 people minimum here to do that job. And that job starts at 3:30 in the morning. It takes about 4 to 5 hours to milk them with cleanup and everything after. So we do that at 3:30 in the morning, noon, and then around 7:30 at night.
Jason, he cares a lot about his cows.
Ask any farm family, what comes first, family or cows? And everyone will tell you the cows come first. You know, ask the spouse, you know, the husband or wife of a dairy farmer, who gets taken care of first. 100% of the time, they'll say, well, the cows are more important than the people. That's how strong we feel about taking care of our animals.
Okay, so clearly very invested in his cows, although he does not name them.
Very invested, and he gave me a tour of all those cows. I got a tour of the barn.
Yes, you call this a modern day dairy barn. We allow them to move around, so these cows can circulate throughout the day. They can lay down in the stalls. The stalls, so those are It's like your memory foam in your mattress. It's a big memory foam.
And I also got to see the milking process, which is all automated these days.
This is where the milking happens. So the cows come in. This is Alvaro, my worker from Guatemala. Then you can see how clean they are. You know, like I always said, you know, it should be clean enough you put it in your mouth. That's the standard.
How big was the farm? I mean, I guess it's big enough to have workers from Guatemala in it.
Yeah, so it's a family farm with 230 milk cows. It's in the town of Hinchinbrook, southwest Quebec, right near the U.S. border. Jason's got anywhere from 5 to 7 people working on the farm every day, and they grow their own organic feed. And recently, they've been dealing with a pretty severe drought in the area.
Well, I mean, you can see by the lawn. It's not, this is not normal.
No way.
No, it's pretty severe.
The drought's not the only thing he's worried about.
Let me guess. He's worried about, like so many of us, Donald Trump.
Basically, as soon as I got there, he launched right into talking about Trump.
Trump's creating a real mess, and he understands nothing. Every sector of our economy is controlled by certain forces. Quite often, people that, you know, criticize supply management, they ignore the facts that all markets are controlled somewhat by someone or something or certain principles or certain rules. We're seeing with President Trump that those rules are changing.
Okay, Aviva, pause. So he said supply management. That is a word that like shuts my brain down, but I hear it so much when we're talking about dairy. I'm from out west. I don't have that much experience in the dairy industry. I do not understand supply management. Can you please explain it to me?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a system that it was introduced in the 60s, but it was established in the 1970s. Basically, the goal of supply management is to keep dairy prices stable and make sure farmers can have a steady income.
That sounds like a good thing.
So there's 3 pillars, let's put it that way. So the first one is that the price the farmers sell their milk at is set by a governing board. It's based on the average of how much it takes to produce it, as well as things like inflation. There's a couple other factors factored into this price, and they review this price every year and make adjustments. So the way this works is that Jason actually sells to an intermediary that processes his product and then charges that price that was set.
I have my milk federation that represents me. I sell my milk to them. They pay me for the milk. The price I get is a blend price because our milk goes for fluid production, our milk goes for yogurt, our milk goes for cheese. So these are all different prices. If it wasn't for supply management, no, I wouldn't make money.
Okay, that makes sense, I guess. You want to limit the booms and busts of agriculture.
So the second point of supply management is that to keep the market from having way too much milk, where it would either go to waste or get sold for super cheap, it basically caps the amount of milk a farmer can produce. So they figure out how much dairy Canadians actually consume, and then they kind of work backwards from there. It's based on something called a quota system. So basically, you kind of need a license per cow. If you want to produce and sell milk legally, you've got to own enough quota to match how much milk your cows are making.
Okay, so that would be the supply part of supply management.
Exactly.
That's where that word comes from.
So Jason has a quota.
We're, 5th generation farm. We have historical quota. I mean, the quota system started in about the 1970s, say. So at that time, my family was already dairy farming. So they would have gotten quota allotted to them at the time. There was a lot more farmers then too, a lot more smaller farmers. People milked 20, 30 cows at the time. And today, I think we're, in Quebec, we're getting closer to 100 cows, average on our dairy farms.
But if I'm not mistaken, like the amount of milk people are consuming is going down. Is that right?
Milk itself, consumption might be going down, but actually apparently more people eat their dairy than drink it. So that's like cheese, yogurt, ice cream,
Right.
It's summertime right now.
Right. A big ice cream guy.
So that's the quota system. And the third element is that the Canadian government puts a really high price on import taxes to foreign countries, which really limits their access to our market. So they're allowed to import a certain amount before tariffs, but once that amount is hit, there's steep tariffs put on that. So They're often between 2 and 300%, and they apply to products like cheese, butter, and yogurt, and they're designed to protect Canadian farmers from cheaper international competition, so foreign products don't flood the market and kind of mess everything up.
Just for my own clarification, Americans can import a certain amount to Canada. When that certain amount is reached, then they get hit with huge tariffs, so that protects the Canadian market.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I'm assuming it's that third pillar that we just talked about the high import taxes that Trump is so upset about.
Yeah, exactly. When he goes on those 200, 300, 400, 500% tariffs, that's what he's talking about. I spoke about this with Jason, and he's skeptical that even if American dairy farmers had better access to the Canadian market, that it would hugely impact those American producers.
The market is so small, it won't change anything. Like, it changes nothing. Their system isn't adapted to take advantage of it anyway, because even if they ship that milk here, within 2 months' time, they would be overproducing their market and our market.
One of the big things I kept hearing about is how damaging the American system is to the environment and to the animals. I spoke with Bruce Muirhead about it. He's a historian at the University of Waterloo. I should note some of his past research was funded by Egg Farmers of Canada. They're another industry that uses supply management. But yeah, he has a lot of concerns about American dairy.
What you have now are farms, like there's one been established in Kansas a couple of months ago, of 15,000 milking cows. Wow. You know, these are called CAFOs that are confined animal feeding operations, and they're ticking time bombs for environmental reasons, for health reasons, for disease spreading reasons. There are a whole bunch of things here. But that is how the Americans have compensated for the cost of doing business, in a sense. Economies of scale, the more you do of something, the more cars you produce, the cheaper they might be. And one of the ways Americans sort of try and eke out that last little tiny bit of profitability of a cow is to inject them with RBST, which is a growth hormone in about 40% of American dairy exports too. And it increases milk production by about 30%. And often that's the difference between success and failure in an American dairy. We don't use it in Canada. It's been banned by, and Canadian dairy farms, it's also don't want to use it, but it's also an animal welfare issue because it is very stressful on cows, and it pushes those cows to produce more milk than they're sort of legitimately able to do.
I kind of get where Trump's coming from in that these American dairy farmers must just be itching to send that product somewhere and squeeze even more profitability out of their product. Is that right?
Yeah, and whether or not the Canadian market is big enough to profit off of, it's still a problem for them. They do want to sell their milk.
The Americans want to export milk because they produce way, 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 way too much milk. So they're just swimming in milk. The dairy industry in the US is incredibly influential. These guys have enormous traction with legislators in the US and also generally with the president. They have access to senators and House of Representatives people, and they would go to them and say, this is what the Canadians are doing to us. They're charging, as Trump says, 400%. There isn't a 400% tariff. Against our products, and they completely omit, of course, the tariff rate quota, which is they don't meet.
Okay, wait, he said tariff rate quota. That is what we talked about with the American imports allowance. Is that right?
Yeah, so as we said, the US can import dairy up to a certain amount, and then after they reach that quota, it gets tariffed. But they never actually reach that amount.
Wait, they never actually reach the amount that they're allowed to import before it gets tariffed? That's crazy.
The interesting thing is that the only commodity that actually gets close to reaching its full import quota is cheese.
The Americans argue that they're basically being shut out of the Canadian market because processors here won't give them the licenses to be able to sell their product to us.
They say that Canadian processors are the ones who determine who gets the milk supply, sort of thing, who gets to import. And they say that Canadian processors don't want to import competing American products, basically.
Aviva, based on the conversation you had with Bruce, it seems like supply management has been serving us pretty well. I mean, even if Trump hates it.
And Bruce pointed something else out to me. Dairy farming in the US is heavily subsidized, and that's not the case in Canada.
Supply managed commodities don't take a cent of public money. So they are not subsidized in any way, shape, or form.
Wait, Aviva, I get what he's saying, that it is not a government subsidy, but I know the next person you spoke to had a different opinion. They said that Canadians are paying for supply management, even though it's not through direct subsidies, because when we pay more than Americans for milk and butter and cheese and ice cream and whatever, that is us subsidizing supply management.
One thing to note about this policy, it is absolutely what economists describe as regressive, right? It imposes an implicit food tax, which is a heavier burden on low-income households, and it subsidizes indirectly and increases the incomes of households whose incomes are very, very high relative to average Canadians.
That's Ryan Cardwell, and he's a professor in the Department of Agribusiness and the Agricultural Economics at the University of Manitoba.
It's basically a transfer within consumers from low to high, and then from consumers to producers. Consumers on average have lower incomes than the producers who benefit. The costs fall on consumers, particularly poor consumers. It's a very complicated set of policy tools that cartelizes, like creates a cartel for production and restricts imports. And that has a whole bunch of unintended consequences on redistribution and on food prices and on international trade flows.
Well, Ryan said that supply management might have an effect on all of those things, but they're byproducts. So it's not what the program was designed for. It's not the actual aim of it. And Ryan says that there might be other policies that can do those things without the need for consumers to foot the bill.
Food safety is managed by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency and regulated through the Canadian Food. That's not a supply management policy. All those same policies apply to other livestock, beef and pork and wheat and vegetables and everything else that we produce. So all those policies exist with or without supply management.
So I haven't heard a perspective like Ryan's very much, especially in the face of Trump, especially in the "Oh Canada, rah, rah, rah." Every politician I hear is fighting to defend supply management. And correct me if I'm wrong, but one of Carney's first bills was a law to take supply management off of the table in trade negotiations.
Yeah, exactly. It was his first bill, Bill C-202. It was unanimously supported by all parties. It was first introduced by the Bloc Québécois. There's a lot of dairy farms in Quebec. I asked Ryan what he made of that law.
It removed any access to Canadian markets for supply managed products from future trade negotiations, which is an absolutely astonishing accomplishment for these lobby groups. I've been a professor for 20 years in food economics. I've never seen anything like this in or outside food and agricultural markets. So I was surprised to see something so brazen, to be honest.
And the dairy lobby would be the reason why I had a milk logo on the back of my soccer medal as a kid, and why I had the milk program in school where I would get milk every day, and all the advertising about milk.
And they're also very effective at shaping, or in fact, eliminating political discussion. There is zero debate about supply management liberalization at the political level in Ottawa. Not like, so, every party almost falls all over each other, trying to show their even stronger loyalty to these lobby groups. So they've been very successful at that.
So those lobby groups, the dairy industry itself, he kind of has the feeling that they've perfected how they engage in public discourse.
I just always like to bring up in the context of discussing with press is, there are issues about objectivity, including with some of my colleagues, right? So some of my colleagues who I interact with at meetings and in other spaces do have obvious conflicts of interest that are often not declared, and certainly they're speaking on behalf of their funders. And, that's their job, right? Everyone has a job. Lobby groups have a job. It's not always transparent or declared, and the press often misses it. And, sometimes they shouldn't, whatever. But I think that's really important to be aware of.
So whether supply management is good or if it's bad, The bottom line of this conversation feels like it's kind of a non-starter because supply management is politically untouchable. I mean, Ryan explained that any Canadian politician who goes after supply management is committing political suicide.
There are basically very few people, in fact, in my research, none, who are single issue voters on if you dismantle or liberalize supply management, we will vote for you. That number is very small. But there is a non-zero number of voters and a significant number who are the other way. Single issue voters that if you do dismantle it, we may change who we vote for. So these political decisions are made pretty easily, particularly in the case of the Liberal Party, who some of our research shows could face the largest political risk of considering to dismantle or liberalize the program.
Okay, so it's likely not going anywhere. Where does that leave us with the Trump situation?
Yeah, it would be very politically shocking if anyone came after supply management. And Bruce, who we heard from earlier, he tells a cautionary tale about what getting rid of it could look like.
If you really want a horrendous situation for dairy, you should really look at Australia. So they deregulated, got rid of all sort of supports for agriculture for dairy farmers as of like overnight, and they have absolutely gone into a death spiral now in Australia. They used to produce 12 billion liters of milk. Now they produce 8 billion, and it's probably closer to 7.5 billion this year. Last year they had to import cheese for the first time in their settler history. They import butter because their whole system has absolutely imploded. And that's exactly what would happen in Canada if we ever got rid of supply management.
Okay, that paints a bleak picture of the situation. I don't want that to happen.
And Jason, the farmer we spoke to, also doesn't want supply management to go anywhere.
My grandfather always said, if they ever get rid of supply management, get rid of the cows. He said, before we had supply management, he said, we were so poor. He said, we could barely feed ourselves. He said, we all had to work off-farm jobs to support the farm. My grandmother was a teacher. And my grandfather would do cut wood for people, do carpentry in the winter.
I also asked him what he would want Prime Minister Carney to know about his experience as a dairy farmer and if he had any advice for him.
Go slow. Take your time. Trump's creating a real mess and he understands nothing. Lots of dialogue. He needs to consult with the industry before making any decision for any industry in Canada. Sit down with the industry leaders, all the players involved, find out what they need. There's no reason why we need to sacrifice any one sector. Consult with people, come up with a plan.
All right, everybody, that is politics for this week from Canada Land Podcast. Please hit that subscribe button. Please like the video. It helps us a lot. And you know what? While you're at it, you can share it with a friend so you can all watch it together every week. Wouldn't that be lovely? Thank you for watching.